to the Prophecy Club. We're going to continue talking with Dean McGriff and Doug Krieger today. They're going to be speaking Saturday, January the 4th from 7 to 10:30 p.m. The first topic is the final battle in America and the coming Antichrist. Then the second topic the next morning, Sunday, January the 5th, is prophetic timelines. We've already made 2 broadcasts with them talking about America, the final Babylon. Now let's talk about when these things can come to pass. Now, if you've been listening to the Raw Prophecy Club for a while, you already know that I think that we can't have the 4th beast until we have the 3rd beast. The 3rd beast is Islam, so I do not think it is real soon. I think that we're probably talking someplace in the 2040s area, 2045, 2047, not trying to set a date, but someplace in that general area before Jesus returns. However, I've been wrong before, and I certainly want to hear what these knowledgeable guys have to say about timelines. Who knows? Maybe they're right. Maybe they're righter than me. Maybe they have a different point of view. But anyway, Dean and Doug, welcome back to the Prophecy Club.
Well, good to be back again, Stan. It's great to be with you.
Okay, tell us about your timelines.
Well, first of all, we want to make one thing perfectly clear, and that is that we're no Harold Camping. Okay? But at the same time, I would like to also state that in the world of chronologies, in Bible chronologies in particular here, that's where our expertise hopefully lies, that just because we might be giving some seasons, times in which the coming of the Lord may appear, does not mean that we're date setters, okay? And or the fact that what does the Bible have against date setting? Well, we know not the day or the hour. And, of course, we know that that verse that has been terribly mutilated by people as far as its commentary on that verse, we no man knows the day or the hour, has everything to do with the Feast of Trumpets and the fact that the Hebrew calendar is predicated on the lunar cycle, and that to have a new moon, it was very, very difficult to determine. You just never know when the day or the hour is going to be. And even so, the coming of the Son of Man was put in that context. And so the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, which occurs 10 days of awe during that 10-day time frame, has everything we believe to do with the second coming of Christ. That is, that his coming would be on the Feast of Trumpets, the last trumpet being the Day of Atonement, which also is the time we believe that the Lord commenced his ministry when he was baptized by John the Baptist. Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. That was his first coming as the suffering servant. He, as the Lamb of God, was offered up. His ministry began on the Day of Atonement. Of course, it concluded on Passover when he became our paschal lamb, our sin offering. And as a consequence to this, his second coming will not be as that suffering servant, but as the reigning King of kings and Lord of lords. He will be coming as the Lamb upon his throne. In other words, his first coming is the suffering servant. His second coming, which is seen in Zechariah chapter 3, I hasten to add, as that part of the branch. And then in Zechariah chapter 6, it is the crowning, the triple crown, prophet, priest, and king, who will be coming in glory. And that is as the Lamb, the wrath of the Lamb, coming in a way of judgment. So these are the first and the second comings of the Lamb of God, both on the Day of Atonement, if you would. And so this is a picture of Jesus Christ in his coming again in glory. Now, getting back to the idea of the timing of all of this and why you're 22 years ahead of us. Of course, you're wrong and we're right? And but aside from that, we found that the Bishop Ussher, who in the 1800s did such a fabulous job as the church's true modern-day chronologist, had determined that Adam's creation occurred in 4004 BC. Now, he was ridiculed for this by all kinds of secularists and so forth, but people have to understand, Bishop Ussher was no pushover. He was an intellectual giant for his times within the Anglican Church. There was nobody who could touch Bishop Ussher. He was a giant intellectually and a biblicist foremost. What he wrote with regards to chronology is so classical. He took over 10,000 books to determine the actual commencement of creation being in 4004 BC. Now, we've done a very intensive chronological study from the Scriptures. So-and-so begat so-and-so, so-and-so begat so-and-so. Almost all the Bible chronologies, Stan, indicate that Shem's birth, the birth of Shem, Noah's son, Ham, Japheth, and Shem being the first, is and was in the year about 1558 years after the creation of Adam. 1558 years, you have Shem's birth, okay, which was approximately 100 years before the flood, the deluge, okay? And then you've got the actual deluge, and then that would bring it up to 1658 years at that point. What is of interest is the fact that up until Shem, that is a watershed period. Now, God, at that same time, was really ticked off because of the hybridization, if I could put it, of the contamination of the Nephilim, the materialization of the angelic, fallen angelic beings, what you see in the book of Enoch with regards to the materialization of these angelic beings and their contamination of the human race. Now, St. Augustine did not think that the sons of God were anything but, godly people, juxtaposed over and against anything so supernatural that would materialize itself and contaminate the human race. I beg to differ with St. Augustine, and my contention, our contention, has everything to do with what L.A. Marzulli, Tom Horn, Steve Quayle, Peter Goodgame, many other current-day prophetic teachers who believe that as in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. These are the so-called alien beings, the extraterrestrials, that are going to materialize themselves at the end of the age. I won't get into the timing of that, but suffice it to say that the first creation, the first judgment in Noah's day, was a direct result of the contamination of the human race. The genome was absolutely compromised, except the 8 souls that were saved in and from the flood. And that took place 1,658 years approximately from the time of Adam's creation. And then we determine from Scriptures out of Genesis 15, two important verses that lay the groundwork in all of this are Genesis chapter 6, verse 3, which in Genesis 6 they talk about the Nephilim. But then it says that man's days shall be 120 years. Now, that phrase, 120 years, let's face it, Shem lived 500 years after the flood. Noah lived 300 and some odd years after the flood. So what's this business about 120 years? Much in every way. You've got to get into the Hebrew. The bottom line being, and I don't have time on a program like this to go into great detail, but I will a little bit more at the Sunday morning meeting. When the Almighty said that man's days will be 120 years, what is meant by that is Moses' understanding of the sabbatical calendar and of the fact that he is speaking in terms of Jubilee cycles.
Yes, I agree.
49 plus 1.
I agree, yes.
49 plus 1. So in that 120, those are like 120 Jubilee long cycles, 50 years. 120 times 50 is going to give you 6,000. Man's days are 6,000 times up, baby. It's over. Now, the early church fathers in particular, Irenaeus, took Peter's injunctions that one day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is one day. Of course, he spoke in terms of a new heaven and a new earth and what have we. And then, of course, Irenaeus, he taught that there would be 6 days, 6,000 years. Of course, that's all predicated upon when does this all start? Okay, how far will it go? Well, they didn't know. They didn't know that there could have been, wow, we could be at the end of this thing in no time at all. I mean, as far as Irenaeus was concerned, right? So it became and has become very clear to us that there were approximately 4,000, believe it or not, 8 years between the creation of Adam and Messiah the Prince, the crucifixion of Christ, who was cut off, and, of course, his ascension. Now, here we have 4,000, and oddly enough, 8 years, that same 1,558 years. There were 31 Jubilee cycles, long cycles, between Adam and Shem's birth. There were 49, which is, by the way, God is a 49er. You got to understand that comment. But there were 49 such long cycles between the birth of Shem and the crucifixion of Christ, the resurrection, the ascension. Okay, now that 49 and 31 is 80 Jubilee long cycles, which is approximately 80 times 50 is 4,000 years to the time of Christ from the creation of Adam. Now, that leaves 8 years left over. Why this 7-8 thing? Well, that's the final week, okay? That you put at the end of the box. That leaves, now we're in the Gregorian calendar era. We are now facing the final 40 Jubilee cycles. 2,000, 2,000, 2,000. We have 2,000 years from the birth of Adam, of the creation of Adam, until Abraham, the first Jew. And then from Abraham to Christ and his crucifixion, another 2,000 years. And then 2,000 more years, if you would, at the end of the age, with that funny little 8 carryover, which, by the way, signifies a new beginning, signifies the 8 that were saved from the flood. It goes into the 8th day, the eschaton, that God is ultimately going to bring everything, to eternity future. And so now we have from 33 A.D. until today, which is, well, basically the beginning of 2014. And if we look at that carefully, we are going to examine this, that there have been, and there will be, up till the end of the age, we're going to be looking at 1,992 years. And then there's 8 years at the finale of this thing that are carried over. Now, all that to say this, as far as the timeline is concerned, there's been a lot of talk about these blood moons, the 4 blood tetrads, the 2 in 2014 that are going to be coming up beginning in April, and Mark Beltz up in Tacoma, Washington, who has presented this to the church, the Prophetic Church, I call us, has done a marvelous job on this. Some don't agree with him. Some do agree with him. Most of us that are sort of oriented this way. All that Mark is saying is this: those 4 blood moons, which appear very infrequently in human history, have an impact primarily on Israel. What are these 4 blood moons doing on 2 of them on Passover? Here's how it goes. The first blood moon shows up on Passover in April. The second blood moon shows up on Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. They're like bookends of the 70th week of Daniel, if you would. They're like bookends of the 7 feast days of Israel, which begin on Passover, and the 7th feast day of Israel ends on the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. Okay, and in between are the other 5. Okay, which would, I'm not going to give you all the other 5, but there's 5 more. All right, so, but here's the 4 blood moons. First, in 2014, you have Passover, and then another blood moon shows up again on Sukkot, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, which is in the fall season. Okay, that's the first and seventh feast of Israel. Then you have a very interesting total solar eclipse that happens on the beginning of the religious calendar of Israel. And then you have another Passover, a blood moon, and then you have another Sukkot, another Feast of Tabernacles. So 2 Passovers, 2 Feast of Tabernacles. Can you follow me there, Stan? Now, Why? Here's what all Mark Beltz is saying is this. For some reason, Passover and Feast of Tabernacles is going to impact Israel. Here's what I'm saying. It's very simple. Passover will begin the 70th week of Daniel, and it will begin with an agreement between Antichrist and Israel and the many, meaning I believe either Israel's leadership and or many other nations will be involved in a comprehensive peace settlement. Boy, that phrase sounds familiar, doesn't it? Okay, it will be on a Passover. And quite frankly, most traditional Jews have always affirmed, with everything from Elijah being, coming and the Messiah coming, that he would come on a Passover. That's why all the excitement about Jesus on Palm Sunday coming into Jerusalem and the fact that, this could be the Messiah. And it's a right timing. Here it is on Passover. So their idea of a Passover is intimately connected to the Messiah. So a false Messiah would be approaching Israel around Passover. Now, what's the thing about the Feast of Tabernacles? Well, if you count exactly in the 70th week of Daniel, if that's the commencement on a Passover, precisely 1,260 days later on every Hebrew calendar will be the Feast of Tabernacles. And that's when we find 2 Thessalonians where you have the Antichrist, who will be called the man of sin, the lawless one, the son of perdition, who will sit in the temple of God, a rebuilt temple, declaring himself that he is God in the temple of God, and that will be what Jesus referred to in Matthew 24:15. And what we see throughout the book of Daniel, especially the last 7 chapters, as the abomination of desolation. In the middle of the week, he will break the covenant, okay? It is not Jesus Christ who breaks that covenant. Okay, I go around and around with the historicists on this, but the fact of the matter is that the one who breaks that covenant is the desolator in Daniel chapter 9 and verse 27. And the desolations will continue. The book of Daniel says in chapter 8 and in chapter 12, verse 11, for 1,290 days of desolation. And that there will be sacrifice, therefore, since there's 2,300 days of sacrifice and desolation in Daniel chapter 8, verses 11 through 14, that there will therefore have to be 1,010 days of sacrifice until the abomination of desolation, and then there'll be 1,290 days of desolation. If you add those two together, it's going to come up to 2,300 days of evening and mornings, which is a 124-hour time frame. That means there will be 250 days at the commencement of the 70th week of Daniel, and between Passover and any feast of dedication, Stan, there are exactly 250 days. So from Nisan 14-15 until Kislev 24-25, there are exactly 250 days. And that means that there will be 250 days, 7 months, it says in Ezekiel, to clean up and to cleanse the land of the death and outrage that was caused by the Gog-Magog war. Therefore, I feel that in the first 40 days of the 70th week of Daniel is the Gog-Magog war, Israel versus the radical Islamic states, the king of the north, king of the south. And then there will be the feast. There will be the cleanup for 7 months, that you see in Ezekiel 39 to cleanse the land. Those are prophetic months. That'll be 7 times 30, 210 days. And then after 250 days, first 40 days, Gog, Magog, then cleaning up the land for 7 months gives us 250 days. Boom, the Feast of Dedication, which would be the time frame needed to dedicate the new third temple. And then would begin what they call the sacerdotal rites of the Jews in Israel, in Jerusalem, in a rebuilt temple. And then there would be the abomination of desolation and the fulfillment of the 2,300 days. And then I believe in the last 30 days is the wrath of the Lamb that is concluded, because at the end of 1,260 days, I believe, the two witnesses, which are a picture, I believe, of certainly the candlesticks, the lampstands, the sealing of Israel, you're going to have resurrection, rapture, and sealment, I call it. And that'll wrap up the whole end, and then the second coming of Christ in those last 45 days in his being revealed to his brethren, in which they cry out, "Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord." We go right in from there into the millenarian rule and reign, and another little heresy that I have fully embraced by Doug Hamp, that there will have to be a new heaven and a new earth
right then
at that point in time, because it's a mess.
Yep, I agree. Well, hey, brother, I have to say, wow, man, you have done a lot of research on that. How many years you spent on that?
Quite a bit. And this means what? Where are we right now? Well, where we are right now is we're into the Oracle of Damascus. Now, that's where Bill Salas is right. We're moving in to the Confederacy of Psalm 83, and there's been 6 phases of the Arab-Israeli conflict. And we're getting into the final phase of that, in which Israel will, although the face of Jacob will wane, according to Isaiah 17, there will be a time frame between that stand and the comprehensive peace settlement in the Middle East. How much time? I'm looking at it as, the only thing we ever got wrong on the ruination of Damascus, which will be a ruinous heap, was we had no idea it would be akin to the destruction of Sennacherib's army, when the whole thing is implodes upon itself and 180,000 are wiped out. By the way, we are not warmongers. Let's get one thing perfectly clear. Now, you might criticize Winston Churchill because there was never a war that he didn't like, but the fact of the matter was, it was Winston Churchill who stood up against the Nazis and said, we cannot allow this to happen. Oh, here comes Chamberlain going, we're the men of peace. I've got this paper in my hand, and it's peace in our time. Well, hey, guess who was right and guess who was wrong? Well, it certainly wasn't right, Chamberlain. Okay, he, in essence, chose war. He did not choose peace. He chose war. Just because Winston Churchill knew that there was going to be a disaster in Europe does not mean that he was in support of it. Absolutely not. Hey, just because I know that if you're driving 100 miles an hour and there's a hairpin turn up here, you're going to go over the cliff, does not mean I put you over the cliff. Okay? It means that you didn't listen to the signs. And what we're experiencing today is the destruction of Damascus, which is in full sway, Stan, the tragedy that's going on in Syria today got to be looked upon as the Oracle of Damascus. 10 years ago, when we wrote about this, I had a lovely lady, I'm sure she was, who wrote me from Damascus and said, I dare you, prophesying over our lovely city, which is the oldest inhabited city on the face of the earth, continuously inhabited, that you're now going to say we're going to become a ruinous heap. I dare you to do that. And you know what I told her at the time, Stan? This is 10 years ago.
Quote the Bible.
I said, if I were you, I'd clear out of Dodge while I had a chance. and she didn't. And now look what's happened. And there is no end in sight outside of the fact that we have heard lately that Israel is prepared to do a lightning strike on Hezbollah. And this is been confirmed by many, many pundits out there that she would not take Iran on directly on destroying her nuclear capability, but would go after Hezbollah. And that would create quite a maelstrom. Now, it's not my theory that there have been 6 major conflicts in the Arab-Israeli war. That was announced by Shimon Peres himself. 1948, the first Arab-Israeli struggle. Then 1956, there was the Suez Canal thing. Then 1967, you had the Six-Day War. And then 1973, you had the Suez Canal thing again with Ariel Sharon. And then in 1982, you had Menachem Begin going up to Lebanon, and the whole thing was Sabra and Shatila and the killing that went on there and the disgrace and what have you. Then in 2006, we had the next war with Lebanon again, Hezbollah, and everything that happened in Israel, and that's 6 phases of the same war. And that's when you get to Daniel chapter 9 and verse 25, that desolations are going to continue until the end of the war. Okay, well, the war, I believe, is the Arab-Israeli struggle. And then verse 27 comes in and says, and then he will confirm the peace treaty, the covenant. Yeah, the Brit Amim. Okay, so that the covenant is confirmed. Everybody's happy. Israel's dwelling in unwalled cities. It's all love and oneness, so it would appear. But that little prickly thing called "let's build a temple on the Temple Mount" is going to just enrage the Islamic State. In other words, there's a build-up to this. Something happened after the oracle of Damascus in Isaiah 17. You get to Isaiah 18, and there is a scrambling going on where ambassadors were trying to create a peaceful situation in the Middle East from a nation terrible from their beginning. And I think you have an idea who we think that might be. And so here we are at the crossroads on the chronologies. So what I'm saying is this. In 14 and in 15 years, 2014 and 15, you had the blood moons. We will have approximately 3.5 years until 2018, which I believe there will be the commencement of the 70th week of Daniel.
Wow.
Now, here are blood moons that people haven't seen.
You're saying 2018 is the start of the tribulation.
I will go on the line and say if there is any date that would match that. Because here's the thing. If Adam were created in 3,975 BC, and the reason why he missed it, I think, has everything to do with the fact that Jesus was on the earth for 33 years, and he couldn't quite put that into the configuration.
We are running out of time. Is that a yes or a no?
That is a yes. 2018 is a monster yes, because there are 3 blood moons that appear during that very time, and there are 3 blood moons which appear around 2025.
Okay. All right. Well, let me tell you, these guys are going to be speaking, both of them. You can tell there's a lot of excitement in it. Both of them are going to be speaking Saturday, January 4th, and that's from 7 to 10:30, and then Sunday morning, January 5th, from 9:30 to noon. First topic, Final Babylon, America and the Coming Antichrist. Second topic, Prophetic Timelines and Events. And yes, you can get the DVD. Call Prophecy Club, 785-266-1112, or go online, prophecyclub.com. Once again, the dates. The Final Babylon, America and the Coming Antichrist, Saturday, January 4th, 7 to 10:30. Prophetic Timelines and Events, Sunday, January 5th, 9:30 to noon. The address is Spirit of Prophecy Church Prophecy Club, 2540 Avenue K in Plano. That's 2540 Avenue K in Plano, right behind the Whataburger. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers, and God bless. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. There are 30 scriptures in the Bible which say in the last days massive amounts of oil will be discovered in Israel, and we believe we've been given the directive to use this prophesied oil and gas to fund worldwide soul winning. If you have questions about our vision, call 877-OIL-ISRAEL or 877-645-4772.